you can't just deny reality.
Right.
You can't just say, hey, I don't like gravity because it wears me out over time. Like, it
so
doesn't
I'm gonna
matter.
Stop using it.
I'm just gonna pretend that gravity doesn't exist. No, it's there. It's happening. But how do you adjust as a company through operational costs? But also, yes, you can get more efficient with ads. A lot of people just don't have a good plan of, okay, I can stomach the pain if I know the benefit will outsize it.
Absolutely.
And it's really hard to get over that if you don't have someone in your company, or if you don't learn how to do it, or if you don't hire someone to show you, hey, yes, here's the reality. Sorry. I know it hurts.
Yep.
But this is how you're going to scale.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Unstoppable Marketer podcast. With me, as always, and back in the studio is Mark Goldhart. Mark, how are you?
I'm well.
Good.
How are you?
Great. You've recovered? Yeah. We were in the studio. We were in our personal studios last time.
Yeah.
Now we're back. It's been a minute since we've been with Grayson and Film Lab, and I've missed you guys, so we're back.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Grace.
Yeah. I was using my crappy microphone. If you listened to last week's episode, hopefully it wasn't too bad. But
we got it figured out, though.
I think it worked fine. The content was good.
It was.
Content was good. We talked all about... the episode comes out... The episode came out a day after. I have to talk in future past tense. The episode, if you're listening to this episode, the previous week's episode came out 2 days after the ban. Yeah. Ban was on the 19th. Episode dropped to the 21st, which is a Tuesday. Extended. Right.
It's a 90-day extension.
Yeah. So we talked all about like, hey, this is how you make it so you don't just crash and burn if you have relied solely on TikTok. But it seems like that ban's most likely not going to go forward.
We need to check the Polymarket odds.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to. I never actually thought it was going to, personally. So,
well, here...
I think Trump likes it too much.
Yeah, I mean, he did call it out. He said that's why he won the youth vote.
Yeah.
Which we called that out on this podcast months before the election.
Months before he won.
Or weeks, at least. Maybe not months.
Yeah.
Because we were watching it. It was like the new age media versus the old guard. And we were talking about how Trump was taking advantage of the podcast and he was getting on TikTok and he was doing these things that was connecting in a way, in a fun way.
Well, yeah. And just
to the youth.
And just his natural presence and the things that he does are oftentimes viral things that suit the platform very well. For example, him handing out fries.
He is kind of just like a ridiculous.
handing out fries at McDonald's.
Yeah, he's just kind of a ridiculous character.
It's a viral thing. So, yeah. Listen to that episode because whether TikTok's banned or not, whether it gets banned or not, that episode is it's an eye-opener episode. Right. There was a lot of people that I was talking to. Like I know a lot of creators who've built brands and products on TikTok solely who just couldn't even, they were beside themselves. And so that episode is a really good episode to help you understand that at the end of the day, we don't own a lot and it can be taken away. So you got to make sure that you've got, it's interesting, right? We talk a ton about how there's so many brands that always want to diversify like crazy, but then you and me have kind of pulled back on the diversification discussions to say, hey, no, you don't need to be on Pinterest and advertising on Twitter and TikTok and Meta and Google.
Yeah, it's mastering one.
If you're under a certain, we tossed the number 20 million out. I don't know exactly how we've gotten that, but that's just...
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've experienced.
No,
right?
I mean, we've just seen that in our client list, and we've also seen, if you just go on Twitter and follow people like Sean Frank of Ridge, I know he has also advocated for that in the past. Like,
yeah, and he's a $100.
They're over $100
million brand. So,
and I think he said like up to 100 million. Almost.
He might have said 50, I think.
Is it 50?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to go back and check.
So like that.
We'll have to get him on the pod.
It's this world, right, of like diversity, where to me it's like, okay, hey, couple ad channels, Meta, Google, but then yes, of course, be dialing in your email, be dialing in your SMS. Like
those aren't channels.
You can argue that they are. They're not ad channels.
Advertising channels.
No.
They're not.
No.
They are. I don't know. Like that's just. They're not even. Yes, they're part of your acquisition strategy, but good grief, man. Like email and SMS is just an extension of your website, basically.
Or should be, yeah. But people don't really treat it that way. So. So yeah, we don't really need to get much more of the TikTok ban. One thing I do want to say, I want to point out, Inauguration Day happened. I just want to point out my favorite part of Inauguration Day was Zuckerberg getting caught looking at Bezos's girl's cleavage.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
I saw that.
That was like so good.
Is that not just a clever angle though?
Have you seen yeah, I mean it could be. But everything looks so like it looks like Zuckerberg knew exactly what he was doing. Hey, do you know who Jack Mack is? Do you follow Jack Mack? Mm-hmm. He's the Barstool Sports. He's part of the Barstool Sports organization.
Lineup. Yeah.
And he crushes it because he just like takes like news, but less, but puts more of like a pop cultural vibe to it versus like flooding in Italy. Yeah, He's not doing that kind of stuff. He's taking events that are seemingly stupid, but he makes them into spectacles, And that one, I mean, he was one of the only people at Barstool that Kamala Harris reached out to. Her team reached out to have him interview her.
Yeah, but they didn't, right? Wasn't there like some stipulations
Well, she was like, "Hey, send me your questions." He sent them, and
they wanted to,
and they were like, "No, sorry, not going to happen." But anyways, he breaks it down in slow mo and everything, and it's so funny. Like Zuckerberg looks at him, and then like smirks and smiles, like he just got away with something. And then she turns like really quickly and looks what looks to be right at him. So he tenses up like he got caught. But she goes to say something to the person right next to him. So she doesn't catch him, but she like immediately looks in his direction. And then once he realizes that she's talking to the person next to him, he like smiles and smirks again. So to me, it seems very like, yes, it could be clever angles, but to me, it also looks like he saw it and he was doing it on purpose. I mean, she was very much flaunting it.
You dirty dog.
To be seen, I think, but
Zuck.
His carnal nature got the better of him, didn't it? on Inauguration Day in front of everybody. Especially since $1 trillion worth of people were standing next to each other. Like that was the most photographed group. So it was really shocking that he even tried to pull it.
Microsoft CEO,
it was Microsoft or Google, Meta, Twitter, Tesla, SpaceX.
Elon. Yeah.
And Bezos.
A lot of money.
Nearly $1 trillion.
A lot of power, a lot of money.
Yeah.
They call it the American oligarch.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
You think that's an oligarchy, Grace? Grace said, I don't know what that is.
What are we talking about? Interesting discussion today.
Yeah, I think...
You want me to set the premise?
Yeah, set it up.
So I got a LinkedIn message from somebody. From a previous client.
Dum.
And she said, hey, how are you? What's up? We're thinking about working with you guys again. Which, in the agency world, just to be 100% honest, doesn't happen. Like, once somebody leaves you or you leave them, very rarely do you continue to work. Like, do you work together again?
Although it's happened with us a few times.
It has happened more frequently than I would have ever assumed.
Yeah.
We don't lose a lot of people for it to be big, but
yeah. Not to toot our own, our retention rate's really long, but it's more of a. We usually, of the people that have left, sometimes it's just not a good fit for either side.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. For many reasons.
Yeah.
On both sides.
So sometimes people, we can get into that another day, but the pros and cons of just working with agencies.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good thing. I think there's a lot of good work to be done from agencies, but sometimes depending on your flow as a company, it might not be a good fit with
how you work, what
an agency or just that person. Yeah. There's many reasons.
And these guys,
either that's what happens, like either, it's just not a good mesh, performance, whatever, or a lot of the people that have, out of the group that has left us, a lot has been because they end up hiring in-house.
For sure. Yeah.
Like they think there's too much control of, it's either they think there's too much control over their company from a third party.
Yes.
Because you're generating so much revenue.
Yes.
Or it's, hey, we just want more control, just like to get on somebody all the time.
Yeah. Oftentimes it becomes, I'm spending this much money with you guys. I could find somebody, one or two people to come work for me full time in-house. And then I'd be able to call them at any given time and have them do anything for me.
Yeah.
That's oftentimes a big reason why somebody wants to go. So
out of those reasons for leaving, when they come back, it's not as surprising.
Sure.
Because it's like, hey, we want to go this direction. It doesn't work out.
Couldn't find the right people to do it.
A year later, it's like, hey, this was better.
So in this situation, we don't need to dive too much into, because we don't want to give out too much, because they left for what we felt like was a very justifiable reason, for internal purposes. There was not at least to our knowledge, there was not a, hey, we don't like working with you. Hey, you're not doing good work. It was just a difference in how.
There's a big difference in the strategic vision of how to accomplish the goal, which we were not in agreement.
Sure.
Of how to accomplish the goals that they wanted to. So we presented our plan. They presented another. We were not de acuerdo. So we decided to split.
Yeah. To be fair, they attempted ours for a very brief moment, less than a month.
Correct.
But it required
more pain.
Much more than that. So
which we were honest about. Like, hey, if you want to accomplish these goals, this is the path, and it's going to be painful for 30 to 60 days. So
I feel like we're being slightly cryptic. Let's dive deeper into the problem. We're not going to talk about, we will not out who these people are, okay? But it's, let's just say it's a clothing brand, okay? And what this brand was extremely good at was creating high quality products that once were in the hands of the customer, the repeat purchase was extremely strong. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to say, I can't remember at the time, but it was around 80% returning customer rate. And just to let everyone know, an 80% returning customer rate doesn't mean that 80% of the people who buy came back and bought again. Meaning if there were 10 people, that doesn't mean that 8 of them came back and bought. What just means of those 10 people,
it means
8
almost
times, whether it was by one person or 8 people or two, sure. Or 3,
which it tends to be 2.
Yep. Came back and bought 4 times, right? Yeah. 2 people bought 4 times or whatever. Okay. So
it tends to be out of 10 people, 2 come back and buy the majority.
Yeah. 80% of them, 80% returning customer rate. And
that was their situation. They have a very strong, loyal cohort.
High lifetime value
of those specific people, but most people would come in and buy and then not buy again.
So, and they also were really great at drops. So it was very specialized,
new
unique
releases,
stuff. It
yeah.
wasn't like they had basics that people were just coming in and out and buying all the time. Okay. And so the plan was that their issues were that, hey, we're not growing in revenue. Profitability, revenue is not growing. And when we jumped in and looked under the hood, we recognized that it was because they were actually relying too much. Their returning customer was actually too high compared to what their new customer ratios were. Right? Agreed? So,
well, the emphasis was placed on efficiency and profitability. Well, when I say profitability, I want to be careful with that term, but I just say efficiency. So the emphasis for them
what's my ROAS?
became very much efficiency focused, which they were, and they were being efficient, blah, blah, blah. But, and this is like right after iOS 14 and blah, you know.
It is.
Right. So this is right as we were changing, or we had already changed it, but people started going to like contribution margins and profitability docs and
We're
all that
talking
stuff.
about ROAS as frequently and
Or blended MERs and
Yes.
So
the plan.
So they were efficient, but then when we presented the reality of what it cost to acquire a new customer
with the type of content they created and the types of products that they created.
Yes.
Right.
And what it would take, the amount of time it takes to turn those into profitable new customers, they did not like the idea of it getting more expensive. They also benefited from the Instagram boom.
Yep.
Which a lot of brands that are out there did. So they came out. It was really easy to acquire customers.
Meaning the very like chronological.
Yeah. Especially female-based customers on Instagram, right?
Yep.
From 2013, 14. I think it's 2014, right? To 2020.
Something like that. Yeah.
So it was going to cost more than they wanted on that first purchase.
Yes. And let's just be real.
And the reason why it would cost more is because they needed to acquire more to fill their customer funnel to replace what would end up becoming the diminishing return of their returning cohorts.
Yeah. So essentially, this happens a lot with clothing brands, and this isn't just a clothing brand discussion, because this is going to fit into many brands that require customers to continue to come back in order for them to be profitable.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what happens oftentimes is, let's just like imagine that every company is a 5-gallon bucket of water. Okay. And every company has holes. Every bucket has holes drilled into that bucket. Okay. And so when you fill it up with water, some companies have more holes and other companies have bigger holes. And some companies have less holes and some companies have smaller holes. So as you're filling this water up, water is leaking out. Now, the big conundrum that many brands will face is, am I pouring more water in than water going out? Right? So is it either staying level, or is it always slowly rising, but very, very slowly? Or is it always slowly lowering, even though I'm constantly pouring? Because customers in the clothing brand space, like let's say it's kids clothing, for example, kids clothing, you are losing customers all the time because your customers grow out of your product. Let's take a baby brand.
Yeah. Your customers grow out of their product. You might have a lifetime value of a parent or household.
Right.
Over 5 years.
Sure.
But eventually they don't have kids anymore.
Yeah. Or there's a gap, right? Like, let's say that
or maybe they really like you for boys' clothes and not for girls' clothes.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Maybe you have girls that you love the product for girls, and then you have a boy and they still make boys' clothes, but you're just like, oh no, I'd rather buy from Zara or whatever, or you name the clothing brand. So
yeah, whatever.
So anyways, what was happening was we started to recognize that, hey, because you guys have wanted to be so efficient, you have been, right? You've seen this ROI number of, let's say it was a 5. I can't remember what it was. And they were really stoked about that. Hey, we're profitable. We're at a 5. Things are really, really great. But what was happening was they weren't recognizing that the rate in which they were acquiring customers, which is the pour, which is the water pouring into the bucket,
Was too slow.
So that was just lowering. So every year it was like, whoa, we've been so efficient, but we made less money.
The same logic applies really heavily with subscription brands too.
For sure. Yeah. So yeah, this should
So
apply
yeah,
to
you can
anybody
be
who
really
needs returning.
efficient, and I think this ends up being one of the big fighting points behind the cost cap advocates, evangelists, I'll call them.
Yep.
And
Cost cap being a bidding strategy in Meta.
And the max conversion, max value
Yeah.
evangelists is, I think, in these certain situations, we can acquire, if you're a media buyer, you can acquire customers at a 2, 3, 4, 5 RX, or return on ROI RX. Why I say RX?
I don't know.
ROI. And that sounds really good.
Yep.
Except it's really hard to grow generally.
Yes.
And don't come at me, Taylor Holiday and whoever else, Andrew Ferris.
Yes.
It's true. You can grow with cost caps too. Sure. I'm not saying it's either or. I think this is just generally the principle that happens is,
totally.
Hey, at some point you can acquire customers profitably, but it depends on what your overall business goals are.
Totally.
And so with this particular company, they wanted to keep acquisition at whatever it was.
Their CAC.
Yeah.
Let's just say I don't want to spend more than $40 to acquire a customer. And let's say they have a
once you try to go over
$90
that though,
AOV.
Yeah, but once you tried to scale at that, it usually would start crumbling.
Yes. Yeah, so we essentially just pitched this plan to say, hey, you guys do a couple drops a month.
And yes, there's other pieces like you said. There's content, there's the type of ads. There's a lot of components here. Sure, you can make things better all the time, right? But generally speaking, let's just talk about holding all of that constant.
Yes.
Hey, if you want to acquire more, this is the barrier that we have. Like, we're efficient in this little space.
Yes.
But you got to start competing. You got to start expanding your addressable market. And it's going to cost more money, but in the long run, you will be more profitable and you will be more efficient. And you'll be able to scale. But in the short run, it's going to hurt.
Yes.
Because you're used to getting X amount of dollars for every customer, and you have this returning customer base that you're a little drunk on right now.
Yep.
But before you know it, this returning customer base is going to be gone.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyways, it was a difference of opinion. We left.
Yep.
And then what happened is this company...
This was in just to timeline.
2021?
Early 2022.
Oh, 2020. Yeah, that's
early
right.
2022.
So over 2 years, this company shrunk by 90%.
Yes. Yeah, you see not only total revenue shrinks, but you see as they immediately, almost instantaneously after working with us, they shut budgets. I mean, they cut budgets probably
because they were trying to
70%.
Be efficient on customers.
And immediately the month that they cut budgets, new customer acquisition plummets. And then eventually within like 5 months, they could turn it off, or maybe it was 4 months. They turned it off.
Because they went to a different agency.
Yep. They turn it off completely. And not only do you see, I'm just going to put numbers out here just to help people understand. Let's say they were at 6, or we'll just say 10 million. Okay. Let's say they were at 10 million. The next year they dropped down to 7. New customer acquisition was, let's say, if it was 10 million, 2 million, drops down to 1.5 million from 2021 to 2022.
See, and this is where the strategic vision of efficiency, because you start getting drunk on this idea like, oh, we didn't even drop that much.
Yeah.
Because for a year, it doesn't look like that bad.
Yeah. Oh, hey, we dipped we went from 10 to 10
we're not
to
spending money,
8.
and we only went down.
So we were actually more profitable.
Yes.
Revenue
we only
was,
went down $1.5 million.
Revenue was down 15%, 20%, whatever, but profitability was up 15% because we got rid of all the ad budget. We got rid of what we were paying for agencies. Maybe they consolidated a little bit. But anyways, all said and done, from 2021 to end of to 2025.
But I want to emphasize the first year wasn't that bad.
First year wasn't that bad. It was the second to third year that was massive, and then the third to fourth.
Yeah.
Right. So they essentially go from
those
10
returning
million.
cohorts are aging out and leaving.
Yep.
You see a 10, 15% drop.
Yep.
Okay. But then from there, so we go to from, let's just call it for math's sake, 10 to 8, 8.5.
Yep.
But then they drop from 8.5 to 4.
Yep. And then
then that kind of holds steady for about 3 to 6 months, right?
Yep.
And then it goes
from 4 to 1.5.
4 to 1.5. Yeah.
Yeah. And then trajectory would be around 700
for this coming year would be
if things went down that path.
Would go from 1.5 to 7.
Yep. And all I see, it's like clockwork, the net new customer acquisition dip. You just see the returning is like 3 months behind it.
Yeah.
Right. 3 months behind, returning starts to dip for every decision you make with new customer acquisition.
And just so you know, we're not bringing this up to talk bad about these particular people, because I don't think this founder had the right advisors around her.
Sure.
Or
yes.
him.
Yes. But also at the same time, after talking with them, in their world, it was making the right decision for them. They ended up
at the time
consolidating the business and
getting rid of a lot of
fat, trimming
bad
fat,
operational costs,
bad OpEx from what they might have been paying for warehousing,
some internal hires
that might not have been efficient or whatever it was. And so anyways, the good news is like they had a aha moment and they said, shoot, we have to like figure something out here, because we're not acquiring new customers at the rate that we need to. And that's what happened is this leaky bucket took them 2.5 years before they were like, oh no, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So now,
and we bring this up too, because I don't think a lot of people have the right advisors, or, you call them consultants, but this is strategic planning that we do. And there's others that do it great too.
Totally.
But it's good to have some third parties come in and look at your business every once in a while, so that you can get an independent view, an outside view, and idea of what your business looks like in the coming years. Because I think sometimes you get it. I mean, we all do it. I don't say this because I'm the smartest guy around. It's just, it's easier to come in when you don't have like an emotional investment and give real advice.
Totally. Yeah. When you don't have necessarily skin in the game, right?
Sometimes sometimes it's hard, and everyone knows that in relationships.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a hard time giving objective advice in relationships because they're personally invested in a relationship.
Totally.
So maybe they don't want to hurt a feeling, or maybe, whatever it is. So it's the same thing with a business. It's sometimes it is very valuable to work with an agency or a consultant or just an advisor.
Or somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Just to come in and look at it, and maybe you don't have to work with them, but
what was really nice about when we presented this to him is Mark and I had experience working with another company at the time. We'd only at the time in like 2019, 2020 had worked with one other brand who had gone through something very similar. We've now since worked with several that's been in this very similar situation. And we watched that brand kind of crumble. Mm-hmm. They were the king and queen of the particular industry that they were in, and had the ability to, at one point, while we were working with them, valuations were extremely high, 8-figure high evaluations to sell. And recently because they didn't make some of those decisions of filling up that bucket quicker than it was emptying. We've heard recently that they've sold for a massive amount less than what they could have sold for.
I don't want to say pennies on the dollar, but compared to what it was.
Yes. So now we have another example. And once again, Mark and I this is like, the reason we want to talk about this is because we have now experienced this, whether they've been clients of ours or people we've just consulted with or whatever, friends and business owners who are going through this. So many of you are going through this where it's like,
and geez, it happens. It feels like this has happened so many times. I mean, just thinking about it really quick. I mean, there's like 5, 6, 7 companies that we are personally,
that we've intimately worked
yes,
with, right?
That have
I don't know
gone
if I should
through
have used
this.
the word intimately.
Yeah, intimate seems weird.
But that we have contractually worked with.
I don't like that
better?
word.
So we're bringing this up because this was kind of the first time that somebody came back. Like the problem that we said would happen.
No, that's not true.
Happened.
That's not true. We currently are working with someone who came back.
Yeah.
I know that was more consulting.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
But still,
Sure.
we
yes.
consulted with someone.
They
decided to go
at the time
in-house.
running their ads for them.
Yeah.
We were just consulting for them. Yeah.
They decided to go in-house.
Yeah.
Which was probably the right move for them at the time. Like they had a really bad experience with an agency.
Yeah.
And they asked for some help of just like how to do it. So some training and like how to just bring it in-house. So we helped them. It wasn't working out, but they recognized that, hey, something's not working, because even though our returners are coming back, like we're doing everything we need to do, it seems like we're acquiring, their revenue just kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
Yep.
Okay. And then ever since they changed their strategic outlook, it's gone up.
Yeah. They were
really dramatically.
This company you're talking about was in the exact same position that this company was, and very similar product, just to a different demographic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But they have since been able to grow their online store really significantly because they had the right perspective of, hey, even though it's getting harder to acquire customers,
yes,
you can't just
stop.
You can't just deny reality.
Right.
You can't just say, hey, I don't like gravity because it wears me out over time. Like it doesn't matter.
Stop using it.
I'm just gonna pretend that gravity doesn't exist. No, it's there. It's happening. But how do you adjust as a company through operational costs? But also, yes, you can get more efficient with ads. But also, how do you just have a better understanding? Because I think a lot of this is companies operate in the dark. They have no idea, or a lot of people just don't have a good plan of, okay, I can stomach the pain if I know the benefit will outsize it.
Absolutely. For sure.
And it's really hard to get over that if you don't have someone in your company, or if you don't learn how to do it, or if you don't hire someone to show you, hey, yes, here's the reality. Sorry. I know it hurts.
Yep.
But this is how you're going to scale. And then remember, most companies that scale and get big, they do it off very little first time or first customer profit.
Totally.
If any at all.
Yeah, there's definitely brands that are first time profitable. And we always shoot for that. Obviously, you want to shoot for that. But in the clothing space or a high returning customer space, sometimes you can get away with not being first time profitable. Okay. And so with this brand Mark's talking about that came back to us when we were consulting for him. We told him, we pitched the same thing and said, hey, the first 2 to 3 months are going to be brutal.
Yes.
From an efficiency.
Especially because of how profitable and efficient they had been for so long.
Totally.
It was a hard move to make.
But once again, they were profitable and efficient, but so profitability and efficiency was kind of like here, maybe on the growth, but overall growth was this.
But then they stopped growing, and then they started shrinking.
And then eventually profitability starts to shrink.
And we showed them this entire projection.
Yeah.
And we've done this a few times with people. It's like, hey, based off of your current returning rates and based off of your customer acquisition and your cohorts and how your cohorts grow over time, but then shrink, this is what's going to happen over the next 2 years. It's not going to hurt now, but if you don't fix it now,
it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt really
years.
bad in 3 to 4 years.
Yep. And they just stuck with it for 3 months. Like we just said, give it 3 months. And they went from not really being able to scale overall to at month 3 scaling 2 to 3x with the same efficiencies before we started.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, the efficiencies really dipped for 2 or 3 months, but then boom, they start to skyrocket. Okay. Yeah. And so, the point we're just trying to make, guys, is if you stop growing, if you stop putting fuel in your gas tank, you are going to save money. Right? I'm not spending money on gas anymore. But you're eventually not going to be able to drive your car.
Yeah.
Eventually it's going to stall out on the highway.
Well, if you run out of gas going 60, like you'll coast for a little.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. If you're going downhill.
You don't stop immediately. Yeah. But
so
you're going to stop. And as you gradually stop, like, your speed decreases at an increased rate.
Right. Correct.
Does that make sense?
That makes plenty of sense to me.
So your store, you don't fill it immediately, but if you prioritize the idea of efficiency too much, yes, you need efficiency metrics. I'm not saying to throw them all out. Like you have to be profitable. You have to hit certain goals, totally. Right? Those are all useful tools. But like if you're operating for efficiency's sake, for efficiency's sake, then sometimes you start making decisions that will lead to a decrease of your store at an increasing rate over time.
Yep. Yeah, and eventually you will efficiently put yourself out of business.
Yeah.
So okay, let's there's an elephant in the room with this discussion because this plan that we're talking about costs money. Right? Oftentimes the scale that costs money because we're talking about ad dollars. Mm-hmm. And so this situation can generally only work dependent upon what your cash flow looks like. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, you do have to pay for it.
You got to pay for it. And if you don't have a credit line or investment or just cash flow in the bank, how do you go about doing it? Right? So the first and quickest and easiest way is to develop a really good ad strategy with good content. Okay? But if you can't just throw $100,000 or $10,000 or whatever that number is at ads to scale at the rate you need to scale, you have to think about other things, right? So either one, you need to think about consolidation and making things more efficient. I can't tell you what's happened to us lately is we've kind of changed our processes quite a bit, and we've become much more than just a media buying team where we're just like, hey, give us money, we'll spend it, and we'll tell you how it worked. And we dive so much deeper into everything this brand is doing, even down into what their OpEx looks like.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's...
Not to necessarily like work in that, but
you have to understand it,
but
right?
Yeah, you have to understand it because it's all interconnected with profitability.
Yeah. We have some clients who come to us and say, hey, I need to make for every dollar we spend, I need to have like $6 in return. And we're like, that's crazy. Why? Oh, my OpEx is not, when you start to dive deeper into it, you realize that they've got hires that don't matter. They have a warehouse of 30,000,
okay, that might make
and you're
sense.
like, oh, okay. Yeah, you are poorly managing your OpEx, right?
Yeah.
So if you can't do that, that's your number one place you need to look. Right? Number one place is you got to go and just look under the hood and see what's happening within the business. And as a business owner, you have to be able to make decisions that sometimes might suck. And we're never advocating to fire people or anything like that, but that's the reality of making sure you're getting what you need out of a good, efficient OpEx. So OpEx is number one. Okay. Jump into it. Look at, do you need the building that you're in? Do you constantly have to have...
Yeah, like we've worked with a company that's paying outrageous amounts of taxes.
Oh, yeah.
Because they are headquartered in California.
Yeah, right in LA. that doesn't matter. At the beginning, it was cool for them to do it because it was LA made. Now they're not even that anymore.
So,
you know, and so they've recently moved.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, they're still in California, but they're not LA taxed the way they used to be. They're more inland. And so maybe it's not as sexy, I guess. But the most sexy thing on planet Earth is money. Right? Like, it's not sexy to be on the beach. I'd much rather be 20 miles inland with cash in my pocket and not insane amounts of credit card debt. And then I'd rather drive to the beach.
Yeah, profit
rules. So, OpEx,
profit.
Well, number one was ad game, right? If you've got, I mean, we're not saying that just because you got the money to not clean up OpEx, right? I'm just trying to address some things of like, okay, well, Trevor, you might be talking about a brand who has the ability to spend $100, $200, $300, $400,000 a month. I'm not that guy. I'm, you know, I might be only making, you might be listening and you might be I've only made $100,000 in your company's lifetime. So if I'm talking to those people who just don't have the money, you have to get more creative.
Yeah.
Right. And so OpEx is one way. The third way I would say is you got to go. We talk oftentimes about the 4 different ways you can grow, which is distribution, conversion rate, average order value, and getting repeat customers. You know, in this sense, repeat customers oftentimes comes from the first 3, right? So if we're trying to fill up our bucket, let's ignore number 4 for now and say you already know how to do that because you've got good product, whatever. If you can't afford distribution, then you have to find ways to get distribution. So you can product seed. You can build ambassador programs and affiliate programs. And I mean, product seeding is like, the more I study, I know everybody is talking about UGC is like, oh, UGC is overplayed. But like at the end of the day, if you go and look at every single brand who's crushing it right now, like I just posted a TikTok video today about Armra, the colostrum the colostrum supplement brand. They're like an AG1 essentially, but it's colostrum, not greens. How did AG1?
What does colostrum do?
I don't know. But anyways.
Yeah, I don't know either.
It's like how did AG1 win? They just put product in every single pretty health and wellness person's hands. And then they advertised. Right? I just got off the phone with Comfort's founder, the sweatsuit.
Also, AG1 got a ton of money.
Of course.
Okay, so they invested a ton of money into advertising to make sure everyone knew who they were.
They got tons of seed rounds, right?
I think
they did. Let's take Comfort then.
Yeah, Comfort.
Okay, Comfort. I posted a video about these guys. It went completely viral. The CEO called me and he's like, I just want to talk. How did you figure out this information? Let's talk about it. And I just asked him, I'm like, bro, do you have funding? No funding. How did you win? He's like, we just got our product in every person's hands. It was a sweatsuit company. It is the most basic, what's the word I'm looking for? Where there's too many people in the market, saturated market. Like everyone's selling hoodies.
Sweated.
Right. I'm looking at the hoodie you're wearing and I could never tell you. I mean, this was no disrespect. You could have bought that on Amazon and you could have spent $300 and bought it from brand name.
Yeah.
Whatever. Right. So they're basic things. And this guy's
he's killing it.
They're doing 30 million a month. Right. Like they're crushing it. Maybe it's 20 million.
So it's a combination of product seeding and ads.
And ads, yes. And then they're doubling down on ads. So like the point I'm just trying to make
is the thing about product seeding is it helps people. If you're working with a lot of ambassadors, small and big.
Yeah.
Like, again, we're not saying go and get Kim Kardashian.
No.
We're just saying go and look at people in your industry, intent-based ambassadors and influencers that are actually passionate about whatever it is that you can line up with.
Yeah. Get
your product in their hands, work with them to run ads with them. It even helps boost your ads too.
Yeah.
Right? Because then you can retarget their engagement. It starts helping you. It's a very nice symbiotic relationship that you can build with people. So it goes hand in hand with ads.
But
and
totally.
it's a good way to grow organically. It does have, that's not going to be the thing that scales you to
You can't
X
just
amount.
do that.
Yeah, you can't just do that.
You
So
gotta add
if you're only doing that and you
advertising
think
to
it's
it,
not working, it's probably because you're not coupling it with ads.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even my wife, right? Okay, so little just like background on my wife. My wife is one of the most healthy people I know. Right? I know your wife is very similar. My wife is the type of person who sends like stool samples to doctors to know exactly the type of things she should be consuming in her body. Right? Like she is that person who knows everything. Like she will drink an extra glass of water and recognize what it does to her body. Like she is so in tune with her body and what she puts in it.
Right.
That it's crazy. She's got the Aura ring. She's got everything, you know? So she will wake up and be like, I didn't get enough sleep. I guarantee it. And it's sure enough, she just knows everything. Where me, I'm like, I don't know. Anyways. Okay. Even she is taking every supplement that has been the most scientifically possible. She has had the most scientific work done to say this is what you should be taking.
Scientifically researched.
Yes. From blood work to spit to everything. And even she almost yesterday bought Armora because she's like, I just see everybody doing it.
Yeah, I don't even know. What is colostrum?
I know it comes from cows. Okay. I know colostrum helps.
So it's not collagen.
No, it helps babies. Like I know that like if you have a baby who has I want to say what's the one where they have to put them under lights?
Yeah, let's try to get this Armra guy on here and tell us about.
It's a woman who owns it, but so colostrum comes from breast milk. So like the first couple feedings ever, like right when a mom has a baby, your wife would know this. It's like colostrum that the baby gets. That's like almost like there's so many scientific facts that's like if your baby gets that colostrum from you within the first X amount of time, like they will be so much better off. Like that's their initial like journey to health. And then eventually you don't make it anymore and it's just breast milk. But you can take colostrum. Anyways, guys, the point I'm trying to make before we get into scientific facts about what colostrum does is my wife knows she doesn't need that based off of what tests she's done. Yet she almost subscribed and started spending $100 a month. And I had to stop her. Like, don't. You know your health. You know you're actually already getting colostrum in some of the supplements. So why would you buy a colostrum? You don't need it. But she's like, I'm just seeing everyone doing it. And that's what product seeding can do, mixed with ads. And product seeding is not that expensive. Some products it would be, right? We have a client who sells e-bikes, and yeah, that's expensive to seed that. But if you're talking clothes, if you're talking supplements, if you're talking jewelry, if you're talking food, if you're talking anything in the CPG space, it is not a lot of money to just say, hey, here's a pair of earrings.
Yeah.
Hey,
so
here's
true.
some greens.
So true.
And just get it out there. So it's a great way. Borrowed distribution is what we call it. It's borrowed distribution. And then couple it with paid ads.
Well, that is a great way to wrap it up. You know, full circle. We went from Zuckerberg looking at Jeff Bezos' girlfriend's breasts to
pay more money
colostrum
to support
in breasts.
Zuckerberg. Yeah.
To
paid ads with Zuckerberg.
You got to keep feeding your baby. Your baby is your business.
So, the big visual here is think of your business as a bucket of water. And depending on how big your holes are, you have to just make sure you're putting more in than is leaking out. And if you don't, like, that's as simple as it is.
Yeah.
And
even if you don't think you have that leaky of a bucket, it is for sure leaking.
Every bucket leaks.
And maybe it doesn't leak a lot, but eventually it speeds up.
Yes.
Did you guys touch on what the leaking is, what the holes are?
Yeah, the holes can be, Grayson asked the question, which is a really good question. He said, have you guys touched on what the holes can be? Right? The holes can be 1,000 things. The holes can be, in this situation, as we talk about returning, when you rely returning
your
customers.
bucket of water is the money, right? Like that you actually get to keep.
Yep.
And the holes would be either operational costs, right?
It could be operational costs.
It's your
It could
retention
be
rates.
It could be, hey, my kids grew out, so let's drill another hole. It could be my website sucks. It could be my product isn't good. But in this case, the water is the money that's coming in. The holes are the retention rate, the lack of being able to keep those people going for a certain, because no one sticks with a brand all the time.
No.
There's very few brands that people have stuck with. Like, can you think of the longest? I know this one for me. Can you think of what brand you've stuck with the longest?
Oh, define stuck with.
You buy on a very consistent basis. Grayson says Vans. Mine's Quip. Quip, the toothbrush subscription. I joined Quip in 2009. And I haven't, every month I get charged, or every 3 months I've edited it because I don't use their toothpaste anymore because I use xylitol toothpaste. But
Apple.
Yeah. You can't count that one though.
Why?
It's just so big.
Well, that's the one.
You can't count Apple. You can't count Nike. But the point I'm trying to make is you can't think of anything besides Apple.
Guayaki, yerba mate, maybe?
Yeah, okay. And
That's
yerba
a
mate is
consumable.
pretty relatively new. Last 4 years? For you?
I mean, since I got home from Argentina, so that'd be 2014.
Oh, really? Okay. I just heard about yerba mate maybe 4 years ago then.
Yeah.
Brand.
Yeah,
yerba
Guayaki.
mate.
No, Guayaki's been around.
Has it?
The one that's makes here. But now there's a new one called Magic
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen
that's Utah-based that has some adaptogens,
some mushies.
some mushies in there.
Yeah, so
But anyways.
the point is you generally don't stick with brands very long. You do sometimes, right? Like I used to be
But
diehard
we're talking
Nike,
like
and now
consumables and tech. Like, let's talk more. Yeah, like if you're talking like apparel, which that's a lot harder to stay with the brand for that long,
totally.
right? Because like
There's
even
a lot of competition.
yeah, if like hey, I like Lululemon pants or something.
Yeah.
It's like, well, Roan makes good ones too, and
So does Vuori.
so does Vuori, and so Cuts and Collar, and like you name it. I think Nomadic just came out with them too. So how do you build brand loyalty? Because I think, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be, if you can have brand loyalty, which starts with your product, but has to go a little bit more of an emotional connection.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good topic for next week, right?
Yeah.
We've talked a ton about acquisition and filling the bucket. So maybe next week we talk about patching the holes, right?
Yeah, especially with emotional
Yeah.
based psychology.
Yeah. I like it. Cool. Anything else you
everybody.
want to add?
I just need to go to the bathroom.
Fair enough. Well, you drink 2 poppies on the set, so that makes a lot of sense.
And a lot of water today.
Yeah. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We're glad we're consistently back. We're back. We won't have as big of a break as we did. That was our fault. But we're back. So
We're back, baby.
subscribe, download, do all the things. Show us some love. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Unstoppable Marketer podcast. Please go rate and subscribe the podcast, whether it's good or bad. We want to hear from you because we always want to make this podcast better. If you want to get in touch with me or give me any direct feedback, please go follow me and get in touch with me. I am at the Trevor Crump on both Instagram and TikTok. Thank you, and we will see you next week.